I'm looking at roofing squares or devices for marking out plumb cuts and bird's mouths. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you 6 of the best and just give you a quick run through on how to use them. At the end of it, I'd like you to vote for your favourite. Tell us which one you prefer out of all these. We've got what a carpenter would call a framing square. Now this one is from Silverline, very cheap and cheerful. They're not very good. I've got to say that steel is not fantastic, but I got this simply because my Stanley one, although it's pretty robust, it's a lot chunkier, it's very hard to see the numbers. This is what carpenters always used to use to set out roofs. This is a bit of a mystery to me because Silverline is a British company, I know them well. The fact that they're marketing an imperial roofing square, which is basically an American pattern. The big difference between ours, the one that Robin's got, which is a metric one, which has got degrees written along it. The Americans use a system called rise per foot run. So you've got 2 wall plates, and what you do is you measure the distance across there, you deduct the thickness of the ridge from that measurement, and then you halve what you've got left, and that gives you the run. And it's that run, supposing it was 12 feet, you then need to know what the rise is per foot of that run. So if you've got 12 feet and you've got 6 inches of rise on the roof for every foot that it travels along. So that's what they call the pitch. That's the gradient. So if you had 12 times 6, you would have 72 inches at the end. That would be the height of your roof, 72 inches at the top. That's what they use, and this is the thing they use to do it with. So let me just show you just on this mock rafter that I've got exactly what's involved. We've got 12 there, we've got 6 there, so that will give us our plumb cut there, and then if we slide the thing down the roof, we can then mark out again another plumb cut, and then a cut for our horizontal line, and that will be our bird's mouth. What they've also got on here, common rafter length per foot run. You have a number there, 1342, and that number there, the amount the rafter is longer. If it's a foot along the horizontal, as it goes uphill, it becomes 13.42 inches. The reason this is slightly complicated is because the Americans using this system then have to convert that 0.42 of an inch into something that they can use, which is 16ths and all the rest of it. We don't have that problem because we use the metric system. We would deal in millimeters and we would deal in degrees of angle. So I just want to give you a little tip. When you do that calculation, the one that I've just shown you, don't worry about deducting the thickness of the ridge. Cut your trial rafters as if the ridge wasn't there. In other words, as if you were coming up with 2 rafters and they were just going to meet in the middle as a truss roof would, without any ridge plate going through the middle. We know they're going to be oversized. If you've done everything right and you've cut right, when you put those 2 rafters up together on the roof without the ridge, they will kiss each other. They will be a nice line straight down the middle. If you've made a mistake and you put those rafters up there and things aren't looking hunky-dory, at that point you've got yourselves an opportunity to just make that adjustment because you've got extra length on that rafter. I know carpenters that have been doing this for years and years and years who still do that, because there's nothing worse than cutting a rafter short. We've all done it, everyone's done it, and this is a way of making sure that that mistake doesn't end up costing you a length of rafter. So the next one I want to show you in this procession of tools, what is generically known as the speed square. I say that because Swanson invented a version of this for speed square, which is a registered trademark. So we don't want to tread on any toes, do we? The other one, of course, the Johnny square, that was invented by a guy called Johnny Wong. They're all a variation on a theme, and this one is nice aluminium, thick aluminium. So let's see how you can use this little device to do pretty much everything that that bigger framing square does, only faster. That's why they call it the speed square. We've got the common rafter conversion for our inch rise per foot, so that's the American system. So you can see we've got the pivot point here. They always mark up the pivot point, and then we just swing this round to 35 degrees, line that up precisely on the edge of the piece of timber. This is slightly rounded. If you sight it down, you'll be able to see where that 35 is. And then we mark along here, and that is our plumb cut. That would be the top of the rafter. So in other words, there where it meets the ridge plate. So we measure the length of our roof. So we can go from the sharp point at the top where it reaches the ridge all the way down to wherever we've been told our length of our rafter is, and that we can get from our app quite easily. And then we mark off another 35, our lower plumb cut, which is going to be for the back of the bird's mouth. So that's the point at which the wall plate is going to fit over. So if we'd been measuring this with a tape measure, we would have gone from the tip there down to the corner of our wall plate, and we would have marked that with our tape measure. And then we would have drawn our line to go through there at 35-degree line. And then we would take the speed square. It's got this line here, the 90-degree guide. They've all got a variation on this. Some of them have just got a little mark that they make. You have got to hold this steady, but don't forget, you'll be doing this on the ground. You're making up a pattern rafter here, and that is your bird's mouth. That's the bit you're going to cut out. When we've got that 35 degrees, by the way, we want to put another line in further down the roof. We need to make another plumb cut down there so that we can put our fascias on, and we make sure that fits in every position all the way along the roof. Then we cut all our other rafters using this as a pattern. The next one in that order is this from Stanley, which is a square with a swivel arm, if you like. And what you do here is, let's go back to our favourite one, which is the 35 degrees. On this sliding arm, you can see what it says here. Use the top edge for setting, so never the bottom edge, because that throws it out completely. And we want 35 degrees. Confusingly here, what we've got is we need to go halfway between those two marks there, because they're 2-degree increments. So that gives us 35 degrees. Plumb cut goes up there. So our ridge is up there, that's fine. That's also done at the top of the roof. So we're sliding down here, and we want to get ourselves a seat cut. We can simply turn that round, go along here. We want that third, if you remember. And there's our seat cut. So then we would slide this down even further to take care of our overhang. That was going to be our soffit, and then wherever our board was going to go, we would want to put our line up there for our fascia board. And then we would also want to turn that round and cut ourselves off another horizontal line that would take us in on what we call the soffit. Our cut then would be straight across there, and then nip that bit off there. Now, when this first came out, the inventor, who was a college instructor, he got this new invention, and he was trying to get it to market. What he showed me really impressed me quite a lot. So what we've got here, bit of a variation on that Stanley roofing square, but with some added benefits. So the same swivel, the same sliding arm. Just for comparison, by the way, that Stanley one, you can see the difference between the two. You set your pitch 35 degrees, but you can see that they give you a much bigger scale here. Again, we're setting to the top edge, and what you can see here is that you've got the common rafter, plumb and seat cuts. So that's the same idea as the other one. So you're setting your angle of your roof according to what that is. Now here we've got a table which converts our rise per metre run, not per foot run in this case, but per metre run. So if we knew what the rise per metre run was, we could then convert it into degrees. So we set that. When we stick that against the piece of timber, we can put our common rafter seat cut along here, But the first thing we do obviously is our plumb cut there. This is common rafter seat cut there. Same game, it's 90 degrees. Very, very simple to use. It's got two sides, so you can flip it over. You can do exactly the same thing on that side as you did on the other side, but obviously that means you can get your angles wherever you want them. Now, this is where I think it's the one that appeals to most people, and the reason why it appeals to most people is because of this table here. This is the only one so far that has given us the rafter lengths all worked out automatically for us on the tool itself. With the framing square, you've got a little bit of work to do in following along and so on, but here we see that 35-degree pitch gives us a common rafter length per metre of run of 1.221. So we measure that run again and we multiply it by 1.221, and that gives us the exact length of that rafter from the ridge to the point where we line our plumb cut up for the bird's mouth. So you can see that that in itself is a very, very useful thing. You don't need to worry about, you probably still need a calculator unless you want to do that some longhand. You can do this on your phone obviously. Now you can see that Steve, he obviously had a line that he was working to. I know he used it, last time he used it, he did quite a big complicated roof. So what he did is he obviously just marked himself up a line there when he had found what the existing roof pitch was and laid this on there. Of course you can also do hips, and your valleys and even your lay-boards are incorporated in this tool. So very, very nice indeed if you want to get all your lay-boards set out. And it also gives quite an interesting account of what you do when you're doing hips, because I know Robin doesn't do this. Robin likes to cut all those hips right in so that they're all coming tight on each other, but a lot of people use this, which is a saddle board just from a bit of plywood, and they cut it across, and then it allows you a bit more surface area for supporting those other rafters. I think it should have sold better than it did. One mistake that a lot of inventors make is that they try to do all the marketing and the sales, the production, the distribution, and a lot of them end up losing their house because they try to fund the whole operation themselves. The next two devices that I'm going to show you follow on from that very theme, because they're also from Carpenters. Both of them are Carpenters, and both of them are, to my mind, very good inventions. This came from Daniel Cox, and it's Essential Carpenter Tools is the company. A friend of mine, Malcolm, he pitched a roof, a little complicated because it had 3 sets of bird's mouths in the rafter. He set the whole thing out with this, and honestly when you looked at it you couldn't fault it. It was very, very precise job. So you simply adjust that, tighten it up, and then you lay it on your rafter. You can see that our 35-degree line, which we set with the Cowley Roofmaster, is absolutely spot on. There we've set our plumb line up. We set up this rail, and that gives us our seat cut. Bring it into place, put it on the rafter and mark up. And there is the seat cut already made. You get a lot of people arguing about this overcut, you know, when they put a circular saw in. If the saw blade goes that much past on both directions, it just makes it a bit easier when you come to saw it out with the handsaw. Quite honestly, that's really not going to do much in the way of weakening. You don't get problems, especially with oversized timbers. The drawback of this, if you want to do your valleys and your lay-boards, you've got to adjust this angle. And the way you know what to adjust this angle to, your hips, your valleys, and all that kind of thing, is that you get his chart that he supplies with it, and that will tell you the equivalent angle you got. So if it was 35 on the common, it would then say to you, you now need to reset it to do your hip down to whatever it is, 20 odd degrees, probably somewhere down there. But again, it automatically resets your bird's mouth for that hip rafter. So still fairly straightforward to use. That is a beautifully engineered bit of kit. Not cheap, but once you've got it, boy, can you fly through the work. So what we've got here is a really nicely, this is GRP, this plastic, it's not just cheapo plastic. James King showed me this and he used it, he bought one, he actually crowdfunded it, so he was one of the first people to invest in it, if you like. So if you look up here, you'll see that 35 degrees is clearly marked on the edge on the scale there, so we can set that. But supposing we want to mark a plumb cut, it says plumb cut there, so we just set that on the piece of timber there. That's absolutely in line with the others. Now, the reason I mention that is because a lot of people say that distance there is too short, that if you've got a little bit of a knot or you've got some little bulge in the rafter, then it's going to throw it out slightly. And they're right to say that, but what I say to you, make sure you pick the straightest rafter and then just use this to make your template. After that, you can put it away in the box. So there's the plumb cut, and I really don't think that by the time you've made that plumb cut and that seat cut and you've put it up on the roof and you've offered it up and you've tried it out and you're happy with it, that you'd have any problems with it. So that's that one, that's the plumb cut. And then if we want to do the seat cut, we simply turn it round to there and we slide it up. There we are, there's the line. That's the line we made previously with one of the other devices. Spot on. So that 35 degrees is consistent with what every other one of those devices was telling us. So there's no real discrepancy in it. I don't think that you need anything that much bigger, and people say, oh, well, when you drop it, it goes out. But quite honestly, you know, how many times are you going to drop that? And if you drop it, just check it again, because as I say, you're not going to be cutting out every rafter with it. You're just cutting out one. So I just mentioned these vials. If you want to find out what the angle of a roof is, you simply measure it up on the vial and then swivel around so your seat cut's level, set the thing off and then read it off and you'll find out what it is. So what we can then do is we can swap over from doing our common rafters. If we want to do our hips and our valleys, we turn over here, and then what we need to do is loosen it off on the handle and reset using exactly the same side as we did before. So let's just check that. That's that side there. So we'll reset that for 35 degrees, which is there. That's precisely on the 35. And now we're set up to do the hips and the valleys, the seat cut, and also the plumb cut, which is there. We can get our plumb cut, as you can see. There's the one for the other rafter, so you can see how different that is. So the hips and the valleys, there's the seat cut. And if we want to do the plumb cut is over here. So we're not using this side at all. That lever, by the way, just slightly in the way there. So we'll just move that back. And so that's going to give us our plumb cut, basically, for the hip and the valley. So you can do all that, and you can also read off, if you want to tell you what angle that needs to be for the chop saw. This, by the way, is a device that my daughter's partner bought me for Christmas. Turned out to be a very useful little device for measuring angles of roofs and all sorts of other little tricks that you can do with it. Please use our little poll. We get a bit of market research going there. Don't forget, now with that app that you can get, the whole thing's become a lot easier. I'll be back with more from the shed. If this thing doesn't lift, I'll be here for a long time. So come back and see me soon.